Hi, everybody, and welcome to Metaphysical Insights. I'm your host, William Becker, and I have a very special guest today. I'm thrilled to have on the show William Moore. William, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. William is a singer, a songwriter, an author, a storyteller. Teller. I call him a weaver of enchantments. A fantastic all around person. And right here and now, I'm going to post his website address so you can go there to find the incredible variety of things he does. Okay, I I can't thank you enough for being on today. How how did you get involved? I mean, because you do some of the darker nursery rhyme stories. And you also do songs that are very different than that, although the ones I've listened to seem to have a bit of a dark side to them. Um, I just found them yesterday, so I haven't listened to as many as I
Okay.
will. You've got the books out, and how did it all start clicking for you to do all of this?
It's a bit of a strange one. Um, like you said, thank you for that very kind introduction. I'm a sort of multifaceted, creative person. I'm an actor and a musician and a general storyteller. People probably mostly know me from social media, TikTok and Instagram in particular. Uh, yeah, I suppose it's this social media that really kicked off a lot of the particular stuff that you're talking about with the books and the nursery rhymes. I was making little sketches of them, started a couple of years ago on those ones, but I started on TikTok during, I think, 2019, 2020. It was probably lockdown like almost everyone else.
Right.
And um, yeah, and I just sort of persistently kept going from there. During 2020, as an actor, like all the work dried up, and there just weren't any auditions really or anything. So I think that's a reason why a lot of people jumped on social media, particularly if people like me whose soul needs a creative output of some kind, and there was a platform I could control. And increasingly, with the way technology is moving, you can do more and more of that stuff yourself. So I've always had a kind of desire for making my own work, and yeah, I've just sort of followed the opportunities as they've come.
Fantastic. Um, it takes a talent to know recognize those opportunities and jump into them and know how to make them work. Um, it's it's not always easy to do that, I find.
I agree, and I think it also takes a lot of persistence, but also a lot of luck. I think it's when you try things. I mean, I think this is true of any kind of creative pursuit. I think you've got to do what you love and what means a lot to you rather than trying to necessarily pander to an audience too much or do what you think people will like, because then it becomes a bit cyclical. You do end up doing some of that, but that's because once you do enough of the things you love, your enthusiasm for that will come through, and there'll be something that people latch onto, and that's kind of where the luck comes in. It's just waiting for that moment, and then when you see it, it's like, oh, okay, let's grab onto this and explore this world for a bit and see what's there.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. Now, with the acting gigs that are part of something larger, what kind of work have you been done plays? Have you TV shows, commercials, all of the above, or
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit of everything. I went to drama school in London I graduated in 2018, so what's that now? 7 years ago. Um,
okay,
and yeah, I've done some plays. I did a sort of Jacobean, like Shakespeare equivalent play. I did some TV. Had a very small part in a Sky TV thing last year, like period drama where I was playing the recorder.
okay,
Um, and then yeah, bits and pieces, pantomimes, which are obviously a big thing in the UK. And at the moment, I'm producing and starring in and have co-written this audio drama, which is very much based on, inspired by part of the world of the books of poems and short stories I've written, and is starting to like connect some of this story together. And yeah, there's it's like quite a big project. So it's taking a little bit more time than I think I planned it to, but it's really exciting, and I'm looking forward to sharing that when it's ready.
Excellent. Now, so it's audio. You won't have a visual aspect to it.
No, it's yeah. So it's like it's effectively like a radio play, but it's going to be on
Okay.
like podcast platforms.
Okay. Oh, this is fascinating. I definitely want to listen to that. Um, I know you've got a game that you've been developing.
Yeah. So that's another thing, and that kind of spun out from the poems,
Okay.
particularly the Counting Crows, Magpies, One for Sorrow one. Um, a group of my friends, we've always played tabletop games, particularly like Dungeons and Dragons, like role playing games, and so yeah, that was one of those things where we had a, kind of an audience interested in this stuff, and we're like, well, we're all very talented. Like my partner's an artist, got friends who are really talented musicians and writers, so it's like, well, let's we play these games, we make up these stories all the time. Let's try
Right.
and make something of a really high quality because we're all kind of professionals in this space anyway. And yeah, and we put it together. And actually, do you know what? Here you go. Got one here.
Okay.
This was the campaign we put out last year. I don't know if you can see it. It's called One Story Whispers in the Mist. And just yesterday, we have activated the pre-launch page for the sequel on Kickstarter. So the second module of that story. So yeah, that's kind of the next most immediate next project, which we're very excited about.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, how does one actually play the game? You don't have to go through, I'm not asking all the rules and stuff, but you're showing a book,
Mm.
and does that
Are
tell
you
you
are you familiar with Dungeons and Dragons or kind of tabletop role playing games?
only a little bit? I haven't played it, but I know people who have.
So it's
Um,
very much, and it kind of depends on who you have running the game for you. But for the most part, it's very much a talking game where you're making up a world between you. You know, you have a character you've built out. Maybe you're an elf, or you're a dragonborn, or you're a little gnome or something, and
uh-huh.
someone who's running the game and is like telling you a story, and you're in a forest, and maybe you're on a quest to save someone from an evil cult or something, and it will be like you come across a bard on the road, and what do you want to do effectively, and then you make a choice, and you're role playing that character, and there are some mechanics, you have dice and different skills and stuff, but ultimately that's the core of the game.
Okay, that
So
makes
this
sense.
is basically a story kind of hand prepared for a game master, someone who's running the game, to pick up, and it will have, it's got some lovely art in it, but it's got everything they need to just kind of give their players the story, run over 4 sessions, and there's a soundtrack, there's some these horror game style audio logs just to make it all as immersive and multi-sensory as possible. But yeah, just to give you everything you need to sit down and play.
Fantastic. That's another one then I need to order because that sounds like fun, and I've got a few people I think that would enjoy playing. Because I go through the list of your books and I'm thinking, yeah, I need that, and I need that, and I need that, and um, but that sounds like a lot of fun and a good mind exercise too.
Yeah,
Imagination
absolutely.
and
I
mind.
genuinely think anyone would enjoy Dungeons and Dragons or any role playing game like that, where you've got a good group of friends and you just want to have some fun. I think it's very easy to pick up and a great time. So,
Yeah, excellent. Now, what about some of the other books?
mm.
Can you talk a little bit more about each one and what they are, what
So
inspired them?
yeah, so there's two others. They the Grimoire of Forgotten Fairy Tales, which was the one I put out in 2023, and then the
Uh,
Tome of Terrible Truths, which was the sequel to that in 2024, and we're planning one more of those for this year, hopefully, but TBD still. But yeah, that's the plan. Um, they are, yeah, they started from the social media kind of clips I was doing where I'd written these poems, or I think the very first one was the Counting Magpies one, the one for sorrow, two for joy, and I've always loved that rhyme.
Mm.
and the version I knew, and it's interesting because after sharing it, I found out much more that there people know all sorts of different versions of this, like depending on what they've been brought up with or what they've heard. But the version I knew ended with seven for a secret never to be told, which is very ominous and cryptic and
Right.
mysterious, and it's like there's an omen there, and so I sort of played with what how could this go on? I've seen more than seven magpies together before, and sort of lent into my kind of fantasy and eldritch horror or folk horror interests, and wrote this thing out and put a video out and didn't really think much of it. I had videos on social media do fairly well, some do not so well, and it was like, well, this is what I've made today, and it just took off. And so, and then I did a few more of those, and at some point, I sort of noticed a lot of comments saying, do you have a book of this? And I sort of thought, well, maybe I could make it, but I mean, how hard can it be to make a book? Turns out it's not straightforward,
Right.
but it was a big learning curve. Had some amazing art put together for it, and then did a second one of them last year, which did even better. And I think there's a folk stories, folk horror in particular, but kind of folk stories in general are coming back into the mainstream in a big way. I say back, I'm not 100% sure how they've gone up and down, but certainly in my lifetime, they've never really been at the center of the cultural zeitgeist. But I think they are really coming into prominence now. Well, that and the sort of Greek or Roman mythology stuff, as well as the other two. Those are the two things that I can see kind of coming into the limelight at the moment. So it's a good time, I suppose.
Excellent. And I'm glad, I hope you're right that they are, because I grew up, I mean, part of my love of history came from uh, Greek and Roman mythology and National Geographic, where I could see pictures of the palace at Knossos and, things like
Mm.
that that you then dream about all your life of going to explore. But, and unfortunately, I actually have gotten to a lot of those, but um, I think they're an important part of our imagination and storytelling. I mean, they all had a moral or a
Yeah.
reason. And I think sometimes it was to scare people out of the kids away from the woods so they wouldn't get eaten by a bear or lost or
Mm.
drowned in a creek or something. Um, but
Well, a lot of the Greek stories are the morals kind of about hubris, right? But
right,
interestingly, between that and the folk tales, something they share in common, I suppose, is this tradition of oral storytelling,
yes,
and stories passed down and how they've changed. So, yeah, something
hmm
quite fascinating about that.
yeah. And like I've told you before, I would love to see CDs of you reading these and singing these because you your face says so much beyond reading the words or just listening to the words. So just a hint.
Yeah, it's one to explore. I suppose it's how that sort of thing works for the modern digital world. The audio side of things, obviously, I've got the audiobook of the first book, and I'm working on one for the Tome of Terrible Truths. And then the songs, like I think you pointed out earlier, I've sort of have my more kind of popular, mainstreamy commercial music, which is on things like Spotify, and then I've got a Bandcamp page where it's my kind of folk music or the dark stuff that might have some stories interwoven for other things I've written. Um, in terms of kind of longer form filming stuff, that's a much bigger project. It's something I'd be very excited to do, but it's kind of depending on when I have the time and what the idea is and that sort of thing.
You're right. No, that makes sense. Yeah. Um, and all of these are available on your website.
Yeah, or through my social medias, if people just it's at William Moore Music pretty much everywhere. So yeah.
Yeah. And people watching, it's very easy to follow the website, and you just click on the category and you go, and things are listed. Um, it's easy to order. It looks like I will be doing so soon. Now, do you ship everything yourself to people, or
So
do you
it's a
have a place?
mixture. So when we run the big like crowdfunding campaigns, then we kind of handle all the distribution ourselves. Um, with a lot of the books that are just being ordered online, they are mostly print on demand. So
Okay.
we'll kind of process an order and send it to a printing distribution center. It does mean that we can be like a bit more eco-friendly with it that way. Particularly as the partner we've got have bases in the UK, in the US, and in Australia, so it avoids a lot of international shipping, which is a good thing. So yeah, that's how we've been doing it so far. There's a bunch of changes to rules in the EU, which I won't bore you with. That means that things might have to change a bit going forward for European people. But yeah,
Okay. Yeah, and frankly, as somebody over here buying, it's a lot less expensive. Sometimes the shipping can cost as much as the product. Um,
yeah.
if
No, I
it's
think the people that print our books are based in Tennessee. So
okay, excellent. A friend of mine sent me his latest book from over there because I wanted a signed copy, and the price of the shipping was considerably more than what the book would have cost. Um, so, and it wasn't a
yeah,
thick book.
shipping's a whole
Yeah,
yeah because you sometimes have to worry about customs as well, don't you? And things getting lost, and yeah, it's
yeah,
a learning curve like anything else.
yep. We used to have a slow rate that would go on ships, and it would be a fraction of the cost. But several years ago, that seemed to have gone away.
Mm.
But that's the way it goes. Um, with the nursery rhymes in particular, do you how much of it is made up and how much of it is the original nursery rhyme?
So, what I would say is the core of it, the start of all of them, is in most cases pretty much kind of verbatim from the traditional one we all know, or certainly that I know, or was raised up on, or in some cases, if I hadn't heard of it, have researched. And then, and then the rest of it is stuff I've written based on, I suppose, several different things. A bunch of research into what various people think about the oranges of this thing is, or what the story it's trying to tell is, and then mix that with some of my influences in terms of particularly the kind of literature and media I've absorbed, and then my increasingly, as I do more of them, I suppose, general style, I'd say, hesitantly. Yeah.
Okay, okay, excellent. I was wondering because they seem to be true to the the tradition of the genre, and at the way they would have been written um, in the purpose back in the day. So I wasn't quite sure. Now,
Well,
did you
I'm
grow up?
glad you think so because that's what I'm trying to capture effectively,
Yeah.
and I'm also trying to tell um, subtly tell some other stories at the same time, which may or may not get pieced together in the longer term, but we'll see.
Okay. Excellent. Um, but yeah, that's why it was so difficult to tell. I mean, I can tell the beginning because I remember enough of them from when I was a kid that yeah, that's. But then after that, how much of this is was already there that I just didn't hear or I don't remember, or how much of this is newly created and because it all fits so beautifully and um, at the research that you do shows. I wasn't sure how that happened. Um, did you grow up with family that was really interested in that kind of thing too?
Um, well, not I don't know about the genre in particular. I'm an only child. My mother was a musician. My father's always really been into his books. So I think stories and art have always
Uh-huh.
kind of pervaded that. But yeah, I don't know. Not particularly that. I've always had an interest in horror and fantasy. I remember reading the kind of Darren Shan books. I don't know if you're aware of him a lot when I was a child, and um, I suppose I was a sort of generation or just after where Harry Potter really kind of caught on and evoked, and there was fantasy sort of became the thing.
Right.
So I guess that's had a big influence on me. Lots of these authors who, so like H.P. Lovecraft's work, I came to later because I used to play a lot of World of Warcraft, where you know, try not to be ashamed to admit it, but a lot of their story is, particularly their older story, is based on his works, and so
Okay.
through that I found out about his works, had a read of that, and that it's an amazing work. We don't have to love the guy, but what he wrote, is kind of groundbreaking for modern horror.
Right.
And then, other influences, I suppose I read a lot of Neil Gaiman's work, and increasingly this list just feels worse and worse because you get into these influences and then another news story comes out and it's like, okay, well, who can I talk about? But yeah, lots of fantasy, horror, folk horror have just kind of been juggling around in my brain for more than a decade. So I
Yeah.
think that's a big part of it.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering because sometimes um the parents will have an interest in something that helps light that fire in the child, and so I was curious. I know with me, with my history love, my dad was a history teacher, and my grandmother loved to talk about the history of the old country and what it was like when there before they immigrated out here. And
Wow.
so there was something personal about history from the beginning for me. It wasn't just something dry on a page.
Mm.
And I would like to picture myself in these places or doing these things and to them. You know.
Yeah, I totally get that with history. It's that kind of, it's almost, for me, I'd think of it as like a storytelling lens. It's like we're all just stories we tell each other to some extent. It's tricky to ever really know a person, and once we're gone, it's how we're remembered. So I think that's a great way of seeing a lens to see the past through. Is what were these people's stories and what must that have been like for them is as interesting as the facts, right?
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Now you have um something available to share with some of your work
I can
here.
read something, yeah, from one of my books. Hang on.
Yeah, because I think we'd better.
Um, Ooh, shall I do one of the poems or a short story?
Whichever you feel like, or both. We have time.
Yeah, well, we can do one and then come back to it or something. Okay, give me a second. Here we go. 24. So here we go. Okay, this is a short little poem about a superstition that's
Okay.
in my second book. A horseshoe that is made of iron, cast in the fires of dusk and dawn, hung above the old barn door, warding off the spirits of yore. In its curve, a binding spell, iron grips the earth's raw knell. A horseshoe that is made of silver, forged beneath a moonlit shiver. Its gleam cuts through the shadow's heart, a silent ward, a sacred art. Beneath its arch the night's mist dances, silver's light hides ancient chances. A horseshoe that is made of gold, rich and warm, yet nobly old. Kings and thieves covet its blaze, lustrous power in its gaze. Round the curve prosperity rings, for gold summons the fortune it brings. A horseshoe that is made of ash, whispered to from smoke and sash, from trees where spirits whisper low, it holds the secrets earth does know. Hung where roots and dreams may meet, ash guides souls with silent feet. A horseshoe that is made of lead, heavy with the words unsaid, shielding homes from storm and strife, lead absorbs the pains of life. In its weight, a quiet force guides the lost upon their course. And while we're here, I'll show you
Mm,
this nice illustration that goes with it. There you are.
yes. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, that was one I really liked on social media. Um, thank you. Now, what was the original inspiration for that story?
So,
Because I don't.
I think I was trying to mix a few different things together there. So, obviously, we have this iconic image of a horseshoe as something a lot of people hold superstitiously one way or another. Generally, it sort of means good luck. Some
Right,
people have a tradition of hanging them up,
right,
and there's a lot of debate about which way up you should hang them. Some people hold that you've got to hang them with the open end up because it keeps all the luck inside. You don't
right.
want it
If you
to
put them
fall
upside
out.
down, it all falls out.
Yeah,
Uh huh.
but interestingly, that's also not a universally held thing among people who do subscribe to it. So,
Okay.
and then um, I sort of combine that with the different metals and materials, which comes from more of a fairy tale angle of things, where
Hmm.
particularly with things like iron and silver and ash wood, they have connotations with fairies, the fae, um,
Right.
one way or another in different versions of different stories. So I sort of thought horseshoes, you can make a horseshoe out of iron or steel or something. So that's interesting if they're good luck, but equally they kind of share this bridge there. And I sort of took that idea and ran with it.
Okay. Yeah, and with the gold, I mean, because you do get a social commentary in with these things as well,
Yeah.
and um, I like that aspect.
Yeah, I try to do a bit of that as well without being too like preachy. Yeah.
Right. Well, you want it to get home to people before they realize they're being educated. Um,
Yeah, and it's also like you said about the nature of all of these stories having morals, and whether they were trying to teach children lessons. And I think in the Victorian era in England, that was a big thing. It was like this is how you should act in society. And but even the older ones, right? There's a message in there sometimes, and I don't know if that's true of everything I've written, but yeah, and sometimes it is something I'm trying to achieve.
mhm. My first trip over to England was in 1984, and no, I was what, 27, I guess. Um, and I took a tour. I'd arrived expecting to go to the Aussie Van Mart, it was called in those days, and buy a kind of a camper van or something and go travel. And
Nice.
it had already closed for the year or whatever. And
Oh no!
so it's like, oh, okay. So I booked a 2 week bus tour around England, Scotland, and Wales. I was over there for 3 months. Well,
Oh
you
wow!
fall in love, you do all the stuff you're supposed to do your first time out. Um, and it was a fabulous trip. And the pound against the dollar was really strong. So it
Yeah.
was affordable over there to travel.
Wow.
I think I paid $1.05 for a pound instead of $1.35. Um,
Wow.
yeah, but on the coach tour, the driver was the guide, and he would talk about the different nursery rhymes like Humpty Dumpty
Oh
and
really?
some of these, and how with Humpty Dumpty, it was a real slam against the king at the time. Now this is so long ago, I don't remember which king, I don't remember the years, but well pre-Victorian. And he was saying, a 5-year-old could be beheaded for this, or put to death for reciting these things, because they had the political connotation, or they were trying to disguise that message. Um, Back in the day, where a 5-year-old picking up the hanky a lady had dropped could wind up in prison for theft and lose
Yeah.
his life. You know,
There
um,
probably was some of that, given that some of these things do originate in that kind of street, we're all sharing a quiet joke we all have together about someone important. And I suppose when, yeah, in those days when that was more serious. But yeah, the Humpty Dumpty one's particularly interesting because people get very ferociously attached to their different theories about the true origins of it, and I saw that on my social media, and I was really surprised by, yeah, how many people are really strongly opinionated about these things, which we don't really know the real answers to. So
No, I don't know how that bus driver slash tour guide had his information on it, but there were several that he shared that way with us and what the foundation of them was, and the penalty if you would have said something like this out loud could have been um,
mm, yeah,
ring around the rosy is the Black Death, the plague.
yeah, that's the most common assumption for that one. Yeah.
Yeah, in London Bridge, I don't remember what that one was about.
So I think the most common theory, London Bridge falling down, would have been either about the Great Fire of London or the Bridge Fire, which was actually a more deadly fire that was
Right.
more contained and is kind of less well known. But yeah,
Yeah, I remember that one. That was before the London fire, wasn't it?
I believe so. Yeah,
Yeah, I can't remember. But that was a tragedy. People see the bridges and they think, well, they're big, wide roads. Well, they were packed with rickety wooden houses and shops and everything
yeah,
else. And
didn't
um,
always used to look like that. Yeah,
yeah, and not exactly a good fire repression system or fire blocks in between buildings.
no,
So
not in those days.
it doesn't take much. Um, do you have anything else set that you'd like to share with the audience?
I could read you one more thing
Okay.
from that book, which is I'm delving into this one just because it's more recent one, and um, I selfishly I like this one more, and that's probably just because I wrote it more recently. It
Hmm.
might not, different people will have their own subjective opinions on that, but um, that's the one I'm looking at. So um, it's either this one or yeah, this one's interesting. Um, this might hint a little bit more towards some of the stuff we're going to explore in the audio drama that I was talking about. So
Okay.
this is also from the Tome of Terrible Truths. It's not too long. It's called An Excerpt Copied from an Organist's Diary. There's a music in the silence, and I prefer the quiet of the Albert Hall at night. The after echo of the thousands of concert goers from whatever event was on today. It's like they leave an image behind, a silent whisper of 10,000 souls. It breathes with me, that poised, energized silence, as I watch the shadows shift like old friends. Then I press the first key on the organ, and the power erupts from the 10,000 pipes, shattering the silence. No, not quite shattering, but entering its space, mingling, mixing, commanding it. The chill in the air fills me, and as I lift my finger from the cold, solid key, the sound from the pipes seems to hang in the dark, waiting. It compels me. I must continue my work. I know this piece I'm crafting is my magnum opus. It just feels different from anything I've written before. It's hard to explain, and you wouldn't understand anyway. But there's something holy about it. Each note is a prayer. Each chord feels like a step closer to something deeper, something ancient. The others assure me I'm on the right track. I've seen the eager looks in their eyes when they've been lucky enough to hear me working. The hunger. I can barely remember starting. They just said this piece would be the key. They never said why or to what. A ritual of some kind? None of that seems to matter now. Sometimes I'm interrupted in my playing by one of the cleaners coming into the hall in the morning, and I realize I must have been playing all night. I'm not sure I even remember it. I just play. It's like I no longer know where I end and the music begins. I slip back into the music, a familiar old friend now, yearning to be known. I know I am close, that my masterwork is almost complete. As I play, the shadows flicker in the corners of my eye. There's no breeze, no one passing by, just me and the music as my guide. The notes seem to stretch out into the gloom, echoing for just a fraction too long, almost as if something is starting to play them back to me. I barely notice my fingers as they glide over the keys. It's as if they're made of smoke. Have they always been this long? My hands move instinctively up to the great organ for the climax of the work, as the chords erupt from the enormous, monstrously beautiful machine, twisting and coercing the air around them. The air seems to thicken, and I feel eyes on me, but not the usual kind. They've been waiting for this. So have I. I'm filled with an urgent excitement, and I'm propelled forwards, onwards. My hands are a blur as they fly around the keys, and I am merely a puppet to her whims. We can hear the music. It is in us. We are building up to a cadence, and this feels like the one. The sound erupts in wave after wave of chaos, and I cannot see the organ anymore. The hall seems to crumble away. The last chord hangs in the air and fades, but I can still hear it. A voice, soft, cold, mesmerizing, and perplexing, whispers to me from the shadows. It is finished.
I don't have words.
Creepy. Yeah.
It's it's hauntingly beautiful. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's creepily beautiful. And I wonder how much of that is autobiographical when you're absorbed in one of your creations.
I mean, I think that's probably an experience that every artist experiences some version of. Um, I suppose it's a little bit autobiographical in the sense of the setting of it. In the Albert Hall, I was literally last summer or whenever it was at a concert in there, and I was in an organ recital actually. I was just looking at the organ and thinking how amazing it is, and I sort of imagined it as this big beast, and I thought about an organist, and I knew about the story I was writing for this audio drama, and I just sort of started to piece some things together and thought, oh, it might be a nice short story for this book, and we can sow some seeds that we can potentially explore in probably later seasons of the audio drama. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's fantastic. Um, and I particularly love good pipe organ music,
Oh yeah.
and it just you can't help but get grabbed by it.
Mm. Just the sheer
And
scale and power and volume of them, big ones. Yeah,
exactly,
they're just amazing.
and it can also be gentle
Yeah.
and delicate. Um, and um, I I admire people with that talent.
Yeah. Particularly, you've got all the different organs, right? All the different keyboards, and they're playing with their feet. And there's something, I think this was another inspiration. There's something about watching someone do all of that, and it's almost like they're fighting with the instrument. It's this, yeah, it's this very physical thing.
It is, and thankfully we've reached a point where there are motors that power the air,
Yeah,
and you don't have a bunch of schoolboys stomping on billows or bellows
that
to
is
make
how
it
it used to
go.
work. Yeah.
Because they're really something. I've I played piano a little bit for a little while and very badly, but that was as close as I've gotten to two-handed keyboard type stuff,
Mm.
and
Sorry.
it's just um, I really am impressed by it. I can sit and listen to organ or piano or harpsichord. Um,
Yeah, I
harpsichord
mean,
is
playing the piano for
very
me is a big catharsis. Obviously, I use it for work and stuff, but I also it's use it. It's just sometimes a release for me to just sit down and bash out a song, even if it's just something popular or whatever. Yeah, it's I started learning piano when I was about 4 years old, and I probably should be better at it than I am. I'm passable, but given how long I've learnt it. But yeah, I'm very grateful to have that skill to just use for my own uses as well as for work. I think my grounding in like music theory is probably my strongest musical asset, but the piano is just my favorite thing. You can just sit down and lose yourself in it. So
Okay. I had friends at Oregon State when I was an undergrad, that were getting or taking music theory quite a lot. And that's an impressive program. I mean, there's a huge amount to that, and it's like another language.
I think it definitely can be for if it's not something you're familiar with.
Hmm.
Again, in a lot of senses, I'm very lucky because it's something that I've learned, experienced, picked up since I was a child. And so, you know, anything you learn, it's like languages, right? Anything you learn from childhood is just more ingrained, and it feels like it was less effort to learn it.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I think it's a mixture of the literal kind of theory side of thing, which I did do, you know, some lessons at school or in my music lessons or whatever, and just the experience of singing in choirs was a big part of it. I think I learned a lot of music theory from singing in lots of different choirs growing up.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, we took piano, or I did, because I wanted to be in the high school band, because our band director had played with the big bands, Glenn Miller, Artie Shaw type bands.
nice.
And he was a master showman, and he always had an award winning high school symphonic band. And so we went to one of the shows, the big stage show they held every year. Oh, first grade, when we first moved here and I first started school, and my dad started teaching. And I said, I want to do that. I want to be in that. So in third grade, I took piano lessons because in our family, my mother, who played the piano and the organ at church and all that stuff, you learn the piano and get the basics, and then we'll branch out into other instruments.
Yeah,
And I wish I would have kept with it, but two instruments in fourth grade just wasn't going to do, and that's when bands started. So I did that all the way through football season my freshman year at Oregon State, and then I was done. Um, but getting involved in creating something, and I mean, we were high school students. We were good, but it was still high school. And even at that, listening and hearing it and seeing the reaction, and at statewide competitions, reactions from the judges and things like that, it really, there's an instant gratification of
yeah.
knowing this was good and I'm part of it. And it's part of it, building a sense of community through the music.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. And there's something about something quite addictive maybe about having an audience in the room with you, whether that is music or storytelling or something. Yeah, like you say, a community, you're kind of sharing this experience. It's yeah, something that I've I mean, I guess it's why actors generally say that the theatre is the natural home of the actor, right? For
right.
all the kind of money and fame and the big projects are now on our screens and in cinemas. Um, there's you can't quite capture what it's like to have an audience right there responding to you in real time. Yeah,
Right. And you have to memorize the whole thing.
yeah.
I mean, when you're on stage, you don't go, okay, this takes over, now refresh your lines, or
Mm.
have these few lines down for tomorrow or something.
I don't
Um,
know which is harder though of those two things, to be honest, because I think I suppose everyone's probably different. My experience of plays is you don't really worry about the line learning because you do so much work. You might have somewhere between 2 and 6 weeks if you're very lucky of a rehearsal period. Um, and you're doing so much work on these lines anyway that you kind of find most of them are just there. Whilst I
okay.
guess with a lot of TV and film work, it might be like here are your sides for we're shooting this tomorrow, you know, and then you get new ones the next day. And I think it's almost a completely different skill. But yeah,
Okay. I guess that makes sense. I haven't done either one, so I, I wasn't sure. Um, but good acting can take some, but can take certainly take the audience away. And
Yeah.
live theater has always been something I've loved. And we've had local productions companies and some one person shows and different
Oh
things
yeah.
over the years that have been fabulous. And we've also, in my adult lifetime, we get the Broadway touring groups with some of the bigs. So it's not the same as being even in New York, let alone London, where the theaters are more personal. Here, it's in a big, it's a theater room, but it's for 1,200, 2,000 people
Mm.
or something instead of something more intimate. And I like that more intimate feel, but
Yeah.
I've been able to see Carol Channing and Joel Grey and some of the other big ones
Oh,
over
cool.
the years. So, anyway, I digress because that's totally irrelevant to what we were talking about. Sorry. I warned you about the ADHD brain,
I'm
but
enjoying it.
oh, good. Um, Now you've got the audio project you're doing. What
Yeah.
else do you have coming up?
So it's so we've got one for Sorry the Malice Beneath, which is the next of the tabletop role playing game projects. That's we don't have like a firm date for when the Kickstarter's launching, but that's near future. And
Okay.
the pre-launch page is up there. People can go and find out some stuff about it, either just through my social medias, like you've shared, or on Stone Fables, which is our production collective's website, which is just stonefable.co.uk. Then the audio drama, which hopefully we're going to start putting out first half of this year if it's ready, and that will be kind of a weekly thing that goes out just on all podcasting platforms, so like your Apple Podcasts, Spotify, also on YouTube, just wherever people normally get their podcasts. Then we'll be looking at doing a kind of book 3 to follow on from these ones of the poems and short stories and things.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's the first kind of 8-ish months of the year spoken for, I would have thought. And then, yeah, I mean, we've got plans for an art book just based on the poetry books and kind of collecting all the art there, maybe looking at some of the concept art and early sketches, some of the like really difficult prompts that I gave the artist, because with Eldritch Horror it was all like, can you draw a creature that there's many of them, but there's also one, and as an artist I'm sure that's just really annoying, but I didn't have to worry about that, so that's great. So yeah, an art book. I don't know whether that will happen this year or if it will be a next year thing, but that's another thing. And then we've got potentially another role-playing game thing planned for the end of the year, but it's not something I can talk too much about yet. So yeah.
Fantastic. And are you getting any? Are you doing any live gigs? Do you have performances coming up?
So I'm still like a jobbing actor. There's auditions kind of pop up here and there. In terms of for my work in particular, I've been throwing around the idea of doing something like a one-man show or a two-hander, but there's like, as you can imagine, as I've just described, there's a lot of other projects going on.
Right.
So it's something I'd really love to do and take it to, I don't know whether it's the Edinburgh Fringe or a more local theatre festival, or just something we do for fun. That would be a great thing. I don't know the when, because a lot of work needs to go into something like that, but it's something I'd love to do. So I'm sure if the time arises, it's something that will happen.
Okay. Good. Because that's something I would love to see if I was over there. Um, or if you can take the show on the road.
Well, or as you were saying about a film or something. If I were to end up doing a show like that, getting that kind of professionally filmed is something I'd probably consider doing, given how much my audience is online. So yeah,
Yeah.
you never know.
Hmm. Well, and then if you could find a good way to monetize that, um,
Yeah.
um, I I don't know enough about how all of the online works as far as payment, but talented people need to be reimbursed adequately
Yeah.
for their work.
Yeah.
And with what I do, I don't do it for free. Um, and I might, but it's my choice, to do something. I'm not going to be putting it out all over um, for people. And with all that you put into these things, um, then the beauty and the thinking and just the total response it, people have, to what it triggers inside people is what I'm trying to say.
Mm.
Um, you deserve to be paid, and um, I'm hoping that the podcasts and the it going putting a video online would make some
Yeah,
people
I
happy.
mean, personally for me, it's like the books and the Kickstarters and stuff that's kind of done really well, and I'm very happy. I do agree. I think it's creative jobs are notoriously very difficult for. Well, they're not very difficult, but they're like difficult to do and earn a living from, right? Although increasingly, with that's kind of one of the brilliant things about social media, and it's like one of the worst things potentially in the US about this potential incoming TikTok ban is you've suddenly got this audience kind of right there. And so if you've got the skills or you've got the creative passion and you want to put something together, you can reach people with these
Mm.
platforms. And it's interesting because I think a lot of the stuff I've had to learn is like marketing skills, promotional stuff. And generally, I think creative people, it's not something that comes naturally to them. They don't like, they want to make the work and they don't want to think too much about selling it. But
Right.
I suppose that's the flip side of having access to all of these tools in the modern age, which are brilliant for selling things, is you kind of end up doing 5, 10 jobs all by yourself. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Marketing's always been one of my biggest problems too. Self promotion. I'm pretty
Mm,
good at marketing other people, but
yeah. I think you just have
yeah,
to kind of separate your brain almost and be like, right, this part of me has handed me this project, so I'm gonna yeah, go and sell
it's
it.
time to get down and do the project. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, Now, do you have anything else that you want to share with us or read, or if you had a video maybe or something?
I don't I can have a look. I don't think so. I mean I can read you one more poem if you like. That's
Okay.
kind of all I've got on the close at hand.
I'm being selfish and I'm sorry, but
No, that's okay.
I love to hear them.
Try and pick something contrasting. Mm, okay, let's do this one. So we're talking about books a lot. Seems appropriate. Where are we? Okay. Don't judge a book by its cover, a wise old saying goes. For within the plainest bindings, the richest story flows. Look beyond the surface, where deeper truths reside. In every unassuming page, a world may hide inside. But tread with care through hidden lore, for not all tales are kind. Some books they breathe with ancient scripts, with mysteries entwined. In dusty shelves and shadowed nooks, forgotten tomes may lie, whispering secrets in the dark, under a moonless sky. Each page a door to realms unknown, where eerie silence reigns. Words twist like serpents in cryptic dance, binding with unseen chains. The air grows thick, the walls close in, as you turn each page with dread. In hidden ink, the cursed truths of a world unsaid. What starts as curiosity can end in fateful snare, each chapter a deeper descent into the lair of despair. For books are more than paper and ink. They hold powers unseen. In their embrace, reality bends, and nightmares blend with dream. So when you choose to crack a spine and peer into its heart, remember some knowledge is a curse, a venomous, dark art. For within the pages of some books there lurk terrors untold, and by their covers you'll never guess the horrors they may hold.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Oh, there's an illustration of that one too, which I quite like.
Yes. That's
Not trying to
uh,
discourage people from reading or anything with that one, but
oh, no, well, it takes me in, and that's what I look for in something I'm reading. How much does it take me into it? And in a sense, I become part of it. Um, Not from the creative point, but you feel like it's talking to you and becoming part of the being of who you are in some ways. I know that might sound interesting, but and relatable, and nonfiction can do that too. I mean, it
yeah,
um, especially I find history, but to do that, but it has to be written in a way that it grabs you and pulls you into it, and you do that brilliantly.
thank you.
And yeah, you're welcome. I listen to you reading, and then I'm starting to see it, see the story in a sense, behind the eye visual type of a thing. And to me, that's a pure joy.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Now, we're just about at the hour, and I know it's late over that your
Yeah.
part of the world. I really appreciate you doing this so late. Do you have anything else that you want to add or put out there? This is the website I've got up for you.
That's my website. I think it's relatively up to date. I could probably do some things on there, but generally, if people want to find out more of my stuff, it's William Moore Music, on particularly on TikTok and Instagram, but other social channels too. Or if they are interested in the TTRPG stuff, then stonefable.co.uk, literally stone fable, like a fable.
Okay,
Um, that's where that
let me,
is.
something just, oh, I hate it when this computer does things like that. Um, Stone Fable. I'll have to add that later. I'll get it
No worries.
because
Yeah, no. But anyway,
something,
that's
oh,
that's
wait.
all in terms of the promotion I should do. But otherwise, we've talked about everything. Yeah.
Great. Okay, let me see. I've got this taken care of. STONEFABLE
Yeah. .co.uk.
dot dot.
Co.uk. Co.uk.
Okay, let's see. Does that look right?
That's perfect.
Oh, excellent. Well, William, thank you again, and I will look forward to reading the books. And I just wasn't able to get them yet, but that I should be able to order them in the next couple of days. And I would love to have you back on as you get more more along the way on these other projects, and have some more to share with us. And
Well,
you know,
no, thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun to chat. So, yeah, it's
it
been lovely.
it has been. Okay, everybody, I really thank you all for being um, so um, good and supportive and watching the show. And we'll see you all in a couple weeks. Bye bye.
Bye.